let's call this January 4th, 2021 meeting to order. And is there anyone here for Commissioners' Public Forum? Hearing no one. Moving right on. Paul, what do you have for us for minutes?
Good evening, all. The first thing I have, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written for December 14th, 2020.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Dave, second. Thank you, Dave. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Ridlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Aye.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Aye.
Mr. Jennings.
Aye. All right, Paul, what do we have for warrants?
Next, we have warrants beginning with commissioner salaries for $300. Oh, by the way, I'd like to make a motion for you to approve all these warrants. Next, we have Franklin Electric for 2 grinder pump assemblies, $8,175.54. Next, Beta for services August 1st to 28th, 2020, $23,144.01. WB Mason office supplies, $6.57. Diversified Sign, a town seal on the truck, $125. Graves Engineering, Buffin Access Road peer review, $1,413.15. And the next three are from Veolia, pack for the zinc pilot, $1,801.81. Testing for the zinc pilot, $686.26. And in November 2020, monthly services, $39,096.64. Next, we have the Town of Charlton Planning Board for legal notice for Buffinville, $224. And then Mass Water Works Association for 2021 membership renewal, $75. And lastly, LaForte Electric for 73 and 94 Lakeview, $1,190.
I second.
Paul, did you mention commissioner's salary at the beginning of that?
I did.
He did. Yep.
2 questions. Okay, so
Yeah, Bill?
so Graves Engineering, is that for their review of the plan by the planning board, or what is that from?
Yes, so because we submitted that site plan for approval, even though it's from us, they still send it to their peer review.
Okay. The abatements, can you explain those?
Sure, they're not part of this motion, but they had a leaking pipe in the ground, much like the customer on, I think it was like 50 North Main Street did last year, where they get billed based on the water meter from Southbridge. And again, the pipe was leaking in the ground before it got to the buildings, which gave them an exorbitantly high bill for their sewer usage, which never really happened because the water leaked outside the building. So we're just proposing that you provide the same abatement that you've done before because it didn't make it actual to the sewer system.
Okay, totally makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Roll call vote if we don't have any more questions.
Okay, Mr. Ridlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Aye.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Aye.
and Mr. Jennings.
Aye. All right, next, Paul, abatements, already asked and answered on that question,
Yeah,
but go
I'd like
ahead.
to make a motion to approve the following abatements. 93 Center Depot Road, units 53, 4, 5, and 6. 95 Center Depot Road, units 49, 50, 51, and 52. 150 Stafford Street, units 65, 66, 67, and 68. 117 Stafford Street, units 61, 2, 3, and 4. And 119 Stafford Street, units 57, 58, 59, and 60, for a grand total of $7,165.20.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Seconds. Very good. Any further questions?
Who seconded?
Mr.
Everybody,
Cantwell?
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no further questions, roll call vote.
Mr. Redlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Aye.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Aye.
and Mr. Jennings.
Aye. All right, very good. Moving forward, next on the agenda, we have a scheduled appointment, Viola, 6:35, monthly operating report. Is Vinny in the house?
Yep, I'm here. John, you want to go first?
Sure. I don't know. Peter, how do you want to get the monthly report out of the way, or do you want to just?
Sure.
Think?
No, we can do the monthly report first and then move on to the zinc update.
Okay. I'll be covering the monthly report for November of 2020. During the month of November, the plant was fully staffed. We had myself, Mike Mitchell, and Eric Gatsky. Everybody had a license. Health and safety, there were no safety instances, and let's see, the training. November's safety training was on hearing protection. It was on JJ Calla, which since COVID, we've done a lot of our training on that platform. It's easy for everybody to get to, and we don't have to do it at the same time. We also completed a hawk training for the month of November, and it was a training on preserving and testing of nutrients. And basically, we were testing for phosphorus, which is something we do every week. So they showed us better ways of preserving it and collecting samples. And of course, they made the sales pitch of we should use their kits, which we already do. The month of November's compliance. We had our final toxicity for the year. We passed that. The administrative order had come to a completion for the month of November. In November, we exceeded the aluminum monthly limit, but we made the daily limit on every sample. The monthly limit is 93 micrograms, and our average was 245 micrograms. So we were 2.5 times what they allow. While trying to bring down the aluminum to get it into compliance, we ended up violating zinc with 2 samples that were 2 days back to back. Our zinc limit is 142 micrograms, and the reported results we got back were 147.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? What's the 245 you just mentioned?
That's the average for the aluminum for the month.
Okay, thank you.
So back down to the zinc. Those 2 days that we violated, they both came back with a 147. And again, our limit's a 142. So we just barely missed it. But as soon as we got that information, we put the pack dose back up to where we were successful and brought everything back into compliance except for the aluminum. November, we closed out the DMR QA, and that's a proficiency study that's put on by the EPA every year. All labs that report to the state have to complete a DMR QA study, and Charlton is responsible for reporting the pH. All the other parameters are done through the third-party labs we use, and they were all in full compliance as well.
One more aside. Where are we at still in the zinc right now? And the aluminum?
It's one or the other, Phil. We can either get zinc in compliance or aluminum, but we can't seem to get them both and keep them there.
Okay, where are we at aluminum at this current date? Do you know? Out of a year ahead, approximately.
Around 200 to 300. I haven't looked today's date to see what we got, but we're definitely not passing aluminum. And if we want to pass aluminum, we're not going to pass zinc.
Yeah. What happens, Phil, is it's a turbidity issue. As we try to drive the aluminum, which is the coagulant, we start to see, as you would expect, increases in our turbidity, basically the settling ability of the COMAG.
Correct.
And that additional turbidity is it contains not just zinc, other elements as well. It's just zinc is the one that we test for, and obviously we're concerned about. So I think I'll certainly spend a fair amount of time when it comes to me talking about where we currently stand with the zinc pilot. But I think, in our attempt to drive the aluminum to the floor, to the bottom, I think we've arrived at what that number is in terms of dosage that we can maintain sufficient zinc removal. But to Vinny's point, it won't be at a level that will achieve the monthly average requirement. Certainly well below the daily average requirement, but not the monthly. So.
Yeah, I think the state will give us a little break on that one, I hope. And I'll talk to that later on in some of the other notes that I've made.
Have we asked them to raise our limits yet, John? I know we've kind of hashed this out a couple times now.
What I did is I provided
about asking the state to raise those limits. We're spending a fortune here. Has that been done?
I have provided Peter with a letter kind of outlining all of the efforts made to date, including the results of the pilot charts and graphs. And in that letter to Peter, it is my recommendation that we make that request of the state and see what they come back with. I think it was important. Unfortunate, but important that we found what the bottom parts per million dosage of the aluminum is. I think we're pretty confident now that when we fall below 140 parts per million of aluminum, we start to lose, or we start to impact turbidity a bit, which then obviously impacts our ability to measure, low levels of all metals, but zinc in particular. So.
Dave, I think that's outlined in Peter's letter to the request 403 limit on the aluminum later in the evening. That's why a couple of my questions came in, but
okay,
we're here now. Sorry, Vinny, for cutting you off.
All right, no problem. Moving on. Operations and maintenance activities. We had Slim Sewer Service come out and clean the piping for the scum well. In the fall, when the leaves fall off the trees out back, a lot of them hit the surface of the clarifiers and they get pushed into the scum well piping. So it plugged up and we weren't able to skim the surface of the clarifiers for a couple of days until we got Slims in here to clean it out. After that was taken care of, let's see. Diversified Signs called in an odor complaint, and we had noticed that the effluent had a little odor to it. So we put an extension pipe onto the discharge so it wouldn't aerate as much into the stream, and that took care of the odor for the effluent. Let's see. Clarifier 2 out back. Again, the leaves could have helped plug up the drain pipe on there, and it took us about a week to get that cleared out. Every day we would turn the pumps in reverse and pump back into the clarifier, trying to clear it out. But we got that cleared out, and now it's draining the way it's supposed to. LaFleur Electric, we had to call them out to troubleshoot EQ Tank 3 Pump B. That was the only pump that wasn't replaced in EQ Tanks 2 and 3. But the issue wasn't the pump, it was just a little relay in the MCC cabinet. It wasn't making a good connection. You cleaned it up, and we haven't had a problem since.
So do you relate that to the SCADA system upgrade? We'll take care of that?
No, that's an electrical component, and I mean, that's a whole nother level if we're going to replace all of those electrical components, because there's a lot of them.
Oh yeah, but it's worth exploring while we're at it at some point.
Okay, so Comag 2, we put that train back online. VFD had gone bad in the sludge pump, so it's really difficult to run both trains with only one sludge pump, but we ended up putting that back online, and we got the new VFD installed, so now it's running good. Harbor Controls came in, finished programming the blower controls into the SCADA, and everything there works the way it's supposed to. Due to this time of year, there's not a huge demand for dissolved oxygen in wastewater. So the blowers on a typical day are running below 80%. Most of the time they're in the 50 to 60% range. And throughout periods of the day, you'll actually hear the blowers turning off, which before they used to run at 100% all day, every day. So there's going to be a really big electrical savings on that. Let's see. Oh, while we were putting all that EQ blowers online, there was some inconsistent data. And to prove it, we popped every manhole and we used a handheld DO probe to compare those readings versus what the online DO probes were reading, and they were all the same. So we just calibrated all the new DO probes just to make sure they were good. And in that process, we had found the DO in tank 3B just wasn't where it should have been. So we ended up having Slims come out and clean that tank, and we had found that 4 diffusers out of 7 were broke off.
Can you explain, okay, now the diffusers are usually blade run or they're usually a flat run disc. What happened there?
So the ones in these tanks, they're approximately 2 feet long stainless steel, and they just have a bunch of large holes in them. It's Corsair diffusion.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
And they just screw into a main supply header, and basically the threads pulled off of the diffusers. So we made 14 new ones in-house, and we put legs on the end of them. We made them about 30 inches long, so they're longer than the originals. And with the legs on the end, I don't think they're going to break off. They're all PVC now instead of stainless. The stainless is nicer, but they didn't hold up, so.
And do we have that in the other tanks, or is it just?
Well, we just did it in that one tank. So tank 2 is working 100%. It has great DO readings. Tank 3B was the worst one, and that's why we started there. Tank 3A isn't as bad as 3B was. So we're going to wait until we have a better time and plan it out to take that one down and put new ones in.
Thank you.
Yep. So after we put all those new diffusers in, again, that tank, it hits a DO of 6 without a problem. And our set point's 5. So at 5, it starts ramping down the blower, so we're not eating up all that electricity. On 11/28, the SCADA had another problem. The PLC output to the Ethernet stopped working. So basically we couldn't dial into SCADA from the desktop. So everything the desktop saw was just the same screen over and over. The plant was able to stay running because it wasn't the PLC that crashed. So there's a panel view that's in the MCC cabinet, and we were able to run the plant off of that panel view until Paul got here. Paul is from Harbor Controls. When he came in, it was also the same day that he was finishing programming the blower upgrade. So he didn't charge us for straightening out the SCADA that day.
Can you explain that a little bit more? I want to understand if that's related to you said it's not a PLC unit, it's otherwise, what is it?
So those old PLCs have like a RGB cord that goes into a converter that comes out with an Ethernet cable that goes to a distribution block that goes to the SCADA computers.
Yep.
And that converter is what stopped working.
Okay, so it's just a little, $20 unit that went failed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I had no clue what that was, so that's why Harbor Controls took care of it. I mean, was just one of those things, a piece of communication equipment that was really his specialty.
Thank you.
All right, so moving a little further down the list, we kind of skipped around some. On November 30th, we had that 1.25 inches of rainfall in less than 12 hours. And the plant was having influent flows of 1.3 MGD. And I was doing a little research on the plant's capabilities, and the design peak of the plant is 0.800 MGD. So 800,000 gallons a day is the peak that this plant can handle. And we were at 1.3 for several hours. Me and Eric were in here until about 1 in the morning. At that point, we had everything under control enough where the plant could handle the rest of it without us sitting here babysitting.
Okay, so what do you actually do?
Well, we come in and there's a manual bypass for the COMAG system. So we shut the blowers off in the EQ tank so we can retain our solids. And we open that bypass, which it just bypasses the COMAG part. It's still going through the EQs, the RBCs, the secondary clarifiers. So it's going through 85% of the plant. It's just missing that little tail end. But that's where everything kind of slows down.
This is going to be a secondary question for future for Peter, which is why are we getting 1.3 million in a rainstorm in? And I'm going to leave that to Peter in the future, but just, and it's an aside, okay? Thank you.
Yep. So I'm moving down to the collection system activities. All pump station alarm tests were completed. The monthly full load generator exercises were completed. We installed new batteries in the backup dialer at Stevens Park. We replaced the starting battery in the portable generator. Then we found a burnt fuse in the control panel. The fuse burnt because there was a huge mud wasp nest on all the control circuits, so we cleaned all of them out, and it's working the way it should now. Grinder pump calls for the month. We had 122 Glen Echo, stuck float. It was already an upgraded system. 35 Hollywood, again, stuck float. There was some grease in there. We had Slim Sewer Service clean it out. And that was also an upgraded system. And 11 Sunset, another stuck float. And there was a lot of wipes in there, so we had Slims clean that one out as well. And that was a upgraded sewer system too. We received 27 DigSafe requests in the month of November. And that concludes the MOR. Any more questions?
Vinny, all I can say is dealing with 1.3 million intake is incredible. And thank you very much for you and whoever else dealt with that.
Yeah, no problem, Phil. That's what we're here for.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job. And I can tell you for everybody, I can tell you that everybody else on this commission would probably say the same.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
This is John O'Leary. The only thing I like to add is that I can tell you that prior to the investment that the commission has made to those EQ pumps, there is no way that plant would handle that flow, and you would have likely have had raw influent on the ground coming out of the EQ pump, out of the tanks. So I think making that investment in rehabilitating those EQ pumps made all the difference in the world for us to be able to pass that water, albeit we don't necessarily want to pass 1.4 MGD through the plant, but having that ability prevented a sanitary overflow. So I think clearly the EQ pumps made all the difference in the world.
Peter, if we didn't have that, would that just flood out the whole bottom of the plant?
Yes, because what would happen before we did that, when Zach was here, he would try and pre-plan, and he had a little, like a mud sucker pump that he would put outside the EQ tanks and pump off the top of one of the EQ tanks and run that hose all the way up to the diversion structure.
So we basically could be underwater and the effect on that would be all our electronics would be lost. Is that?
No, we wouldn't be underwater because it would flood down by the EQ tanks and just go into the Katy Brook. Because
That's the lower part of the yard.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to double check my understanding.
Yeah, so like John said, it more so saves the sanitary sewer overflow, or the sewer just going directly, coming out of the top of those tanks and going right into the Katy Brook.
Okay.
So definitely over the last 2 years, we've done quite a bit with those EQ pumps, replaced them. We've changed some valves out. Zach started it and Vinny finished it when he came on board to make sure that we can, especially now with them being automated through SCADA, especially with tank 1 to automatically ramp up now if tanks 2 and 3 aren't handling the flow. I think they got quite a bit figured out and it's working much better.
Well, those variable motors really make a huge difference, both savings in electricity and also capacity. Thanks. Vinny.
Yes, sir.
All right, if there's no questions, John, do you want to give us an update on the zinc study?
Sure. So as everyone is aware that the study was to run to the end of the beginning of November, and at that point we were required to be in compliance for all parameters. At that stage of the pilot, I think we had arrived at a treatment scheme that was sufficient enough to meet the zinc limit as required, but we recognized that came at a higher than necessary or a higher than allowable aluminum discharge limit. So we spent the month of November working to drive the aluminum dosage down while being cognizant of what the zinc limit was. And as Vinny said, towards the end of November, we reached, I think it was 120, correct me if I'm wrong, Vinny, parts per million dose of aluminum, which resulted in actually meeting the aluminum monthly limit, because that's what we were trying to do. But unfortunately, it resulted in 2 daily excursions for zinc. So I think we basically found the bottom in terms of what the aluminum dosage could be to maintain compliance with zinc. But unfortunately, the data shows that would be in violation of a monthly average if you were to maintain that same consistent discharge limit, for a period for the month. So with that being said, I think we arrived at a conclusion, which is although the new treatment scheme that we've been employing would likely result in inadequate zinc removal, it can't achieve in addition the limit for aluminum. So I think we are at a decision point of whether we request an increase up and until they evaluate what the aluminum level would be as part of the new permit, or we revert back to the ferric scheme as the plant was originally designed, which we know is problematic with removing zinc, but would certainly eliminate the aluminum violation. So I think, that's kind of where we sit now. We can knowingly violate aluminum because we know we can't get the dose low enough, or we can revert back to ferric, which we're prepared to do, but run the risk of not being able to achieve zinc similar to where we were in the past.
John, what's your recommendations?
Well, at this point, I think my recommendation would be to revert back to ferric, because although I think we have shown compliance with zinc periodically with ferric, I think it's got more to do with the loading. I think continuing to operate with the aluminum at this point without, some sort of understanding from the EPA, we sort of know we're in violation for aluminum. So it's, I think at this point, unless and until we hear from the EPA that it's okay to continue to discharge aluminum at a higher level, I would recommend we switch back to ferric.
Are you willing to stay on while we discuss the letter to Karen
Sure.
McClure?
Absolutely.
Okay.
you know, with that being said, there's a couple other things we're still doing. Obviously, we're not sitting on our hands. I've engaged our technical performance group, which is a series of, or a group of engineers with Veolia, to take a look, a much deeper dive into our data set, because we know that historically zinc has been an issue, but it really became a major issue for us sometime in the fall of 2018. And we're not really sure what, potentially could have led to that. So we're just pouring into the data to make sure it's nothing inside the plant that we've missed, although Vinny and I and others have looked pretty extensively into that. We just want to rule out any sort of modifications. I do know at about the same time, we had concluded, the commission had commissioned a study by Ty and Bond to do a headworks analysis on improvements we could make to the treatment plant for ammonia. And some of the feedback that came back to improve ammonia didn't really change much in the treatment plant, but it really confirmed that we were operating it the way it should be operated, with the caveat that the recommendation was to put online the 2 additional RVCs, which we've done, which didn't come online very, very quickly. So I'm not suggesting that that's any issue, but at the time we did have a pretty extensive evaluation of how the treatment plant was running by Ty and Bond, who designed it. And the plant continued to operate that way consistently since, but we did see a fairly dramatic increase in effluent zinc at around late fall of 2018. And then, that's what triggered our, obviously the EPA issuing the administrative order.
So why the change back to ferric? What's your thoughts?
Well, simply because, we know that we're going to violate aluminum, because we just know that the data from the start of the pilot to now, we have never been under the aluminum monthly limit, even though for the first, up until November 1st, EPA granted us a waiver on that monthly discharge limit for aluminum. I could not guarantee that we can make aluminum.
Okay, so
so it's sort of like knowing I'm in violation and not being.
Go back to ferric, where does that leave us with zinc and aluminum?
Well, it certainly would put us in compliance with aluminum because we wouldn't be adding any. Where it leaves us with zinc is uncertainty. Again, when we were using ferric, historically, we had periods of time where we were in compliance with zinc and copper and other metals. And there were periods of time where we were out of compliance with zinc, which triggered EAO.
So if you're looking from a DEP standard, okay, what are they going to hit harder, the zinc or the aluminum?
I think if we were violating zinc in non-responsive to the administrative order, that could certainly be a stricter interpretation of our discharge. But I also think that they're expecting, and we need to provide them with an update on currently where we are, which is what I think we're prepared to do at this point. And then in that response to them, we're asking them for an increased aluminum limit.
Yeah, well, I think the concept of initially asking them for aluminum increase, which Peter has put forward in his letter, is probably a better idea, and see if they accept it. If they don't, before we go back to ferric colloid. And if that doesn't work, then I think we need to go into the other options, which is lignum or, PAC, which is polyactivated charcoal, which is very expensive, unfortunately.
Yeah, in addition, not to complicate things a bit, but Vinny and I did some jar testing with activated carbon inside the lab, where we introduced it into what would be what in our plant would be the COMAG flocculation area. Yep. And we did see reductions in aluminum as a result of that addition.
You would see reductions in both products. If you used lignum, you'd see the same thing, but it's not cheap.
No, it isn't. What we figured, what we did as a dosage was approximately 5 grams per liter of carbon in the COMAG system.
Yeah.
Brought our aluminum level down below the limit. We were, based on that information, I had Vinny order a couple 100 pounds of this carbon just so we could do a pilot of that in real, in real time, if you will.
So could we do what we're currently doing and just add a little PAC, which is not the PAC, which is poly aluminum chloride, but the activated charcoal, polyactivated charcoal, and bring our numbers down, do you think?
Well, that's what we're going to attempt to try. So it looked like it worked fairly well inside of our jar testing that we did in the lab, based on that dosage. I think some of the challenges doing it in the real world, if you will be how do we apply it? So we're going to have to apply it by hand, and then
Well,
obviously the expense of it. But we are prepared. In fact, I'm just waiting for some COVID restrictions to reduce a bit, to come up there and actually work with Vinny directly on introducing that, during a day trial of basically adding it into the COMAG flocculation system. We're hoping that we'll get some zinc absorption, aluminum absorption in the carbon, and then settle it out in the sludge, and then measure the supernatant, from the clarifiers.
yeah, I think that, you might find that the sweet point is what you're doing with the polyaluminum chloride with a little bit of
Activated carbon.
yeah, you got it. The PAC, which is polyactivated charcoal. Okay, sorry for the difference there, but okay, both the same initials. And I'm thinking that, if we do the SCADA upgrade, that could be added into the system.
Yes, yeah, I think we proved we get some removal in the lab, which is always important. We're prepared to try to demonstrate it a bit in real world. And then I think once we do that, we'll be able to report back kind of our findings. And then if it does work, again, it's, it would involve some capital and some investment, but it might be a scheme that we could employ. Albeit, now the plant becomes a very complicated chemistry experiment. But at the end of the day, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But
yeah, I'm right with you there on that. I've been looking at that, and I think that the combination is correct, or the other option is just go to lignum, which I originally talked about about 5 months ago, and that reduces both PACs.
yeah, and again, Vinny and I, and we're willing to continue to effort, all sorts of approaches. I just was hoping that we would be able to arrive at a similar, treatment scheme that Sturbridge has been applying here in Charlton, which, unfortunately, we just can't get the aluminum low enough. So.
Well, I think the first issue is to go to Peter's letter to and see if we can get an increase in aluminum. If we can get an increase in aluminum, the issue is done.
Yeah, I would agree. We saw some really good zinc numbers when we were able to drive the turbidity really, really low.
Yeah, I mean,
throughout the pilot.
2 days of violation, whoopee, okay? I think we should put those 2 numbers, but I'm gonna save that for when we get to the letter that we present to the state. And the bottom line is, okay, I think you guys have done a fantastic job on trying to bring it down. And I appreciate the issue from the beginning because I took this on personally.
John, can we look at the data from when we exceed zinc and try and see what the flows are? Because we keep on thinking about loading. Maybe the zinc loading is consistent. It's just the flows that are triggering the concentration to be higher. So this past summer, we had minimal rain, minimal flows. Vinny was saying at nighttime there'd be zero flow through the plant. So maybe it's not really a change in loading, it's a change in flow that's making the concentrations higher.
Yeah, I can't tell you, Peter, what I've asked, and we'll certainly look into that as part of, I've engaged our technical performance group to do that sort of analysis on all the data, look at alkalinity, flow, influent loading, every possible parameter that we measure to see if there's some correlation that, frankly, we haven't been able to find up to this point. And they've agreed to take that on. So I should be able to report back to the commission by next meeting, what if anything, and I'll report out immediately if they find anything. But that analysis is currently underway.
That's good to hear.
Okay, so the only thing that I have is, the reason why I asked you if you would stay on, John, is because I want to discuss the SCADA situation.
Mm-hmm.
So SCADA, I think we're still waiting for a proposal from Harbor Controls and LaFleur to put the information together to draft an RFQ to be able to go out to bid with.
Then Peter, I'd do it under old business, and I want to do it.
To do what?
I want to discuss Veolia, okay, being the main driver behind the SCADA unit, okay, and whether they are willing to be the primary contractor and they can hire subcontractors, because we went down with one unit on 11/28, okay, and I think we need to get on with it sooner than later, even though a month ago I thought, okay, great, we got this plan. But we've had two problems, one with a VDF and one with the reporting unit of a PLC to the Ethernet. And I'm wondering if Veolia is still in the game. That's what I really want to know.
So again, the way I see the project happening is Harbor Controls and LaFleur would provide Veolia the information. Veolia would work to create the RFQ that we would use to go out to bid with. So Veolia is still involved in the process. They haven't been sidestepped. It's just having the people who are familiar with our SCADA controls and everything that needs to be worked on, giving John the specific information to put into the RFQ to be able to go out to bid with.
I understand that, but originally we were looking at Veolia as being the main contractor, and they could hire subcontractors.
I'm not sure if, but again, with procurement law, I'm not sure that we could actually do that the way that we initially talked about. That's why we kind of moved over to this avenue to make sure we go through the RFQ process. If you're looking to, like we initially talked about, to just hire Veolia, and again, I'll let John talk to whether or not some of his concerns with that process as well, regardless of procurement.
Well, we can hire them as a supervisor over the project, okay, and that doesn't have to go out to bid.
But whoever does we still have to go out to bid for the people who are going to do the work. Correct.
But we can ask Veolia to oversee all contracts.
And again, that's why my thought was that we'd get the proposal from Harbor Controls and LaFleur, and John would put that together in a proposal from him to do pretty much what you're talking about, Phil.
I concur on one level,
Okay.
but I think at this point, since we've gone down again on one side of it, we've gone down totally as a plant that's almost emergent, and that since Veolia has total understanding of the plant, with Vinny knowing every in and out of it, okay, that we should use Viola as the master over all the subcontracts, and then we can put it out for bid. That's where I'm at. And that's old business, by the way, not new business.
Well, we're under appointments, and that's where the SCADA upgrade discussion is. So I think we should do it now because we don't have SCADA under old business. So now's the correct time to talk about it.
So my issue is that, okay, I find that there's been too many failures in the plant within the last 2 months. Okay, and we had a major failure, and that we need to get on with the issue of SCADA and devising a master plan with somebody who has been dealing with the plant long term, and that's Viola.
What we'll do, Peter, is we'll reach out tomorrow to Harbor and LaFleur and get their recommended approach. I think that's ultimately what the position we're at right now is the appropriate approach to the upgrade. Veolia, we have brought in the vendor that we use for these activities, and they developed an approach which you have a copy of. I think the request was to have the local vendors that have been servicing the equipment look at it from a different perspective to see if there's a more efficient and or economical way to achieve the same result. They came in, I think, 2 weeks ago, and the request of them was to provide us with their approach to solving the problem. And then once we get that, which, you know, I'll make sure we get within short order, Peter. We had hoped to have it for this meeting, but I think at that point, you'll have at least a good roadmap as to what the upgrade should look like and should include. And then we should be able to put it out to bid relatively quickly. And of course, Veolia, as your service provider, will be, you know, you don't have to pay for that. We will be engaged throughout the entire upgrade. We need to be engaged throughout the upgrade. As we work towards that. But I think until we have a comparative way to do it, I think, you know, you won't be satisfied that perhaps you're getting the best solution at the best price. So I don't know if that
Peter,
makes sense. To
John, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Why the step back from the original plan, which was that Viola was going to run this situation? It's a hard question. I'm sorry to put it in public.
No, it's not a hard question. I think the concern was that you didn't have anything to compare it to. And could you, you know, hold it up to scrutiny to say that this was absolutely the best price and the best approach? It was a price and an approach, but it was only from us. And I think the question was, you know, would it hold scrutiny to anyone that might ask as to, you know, what could you compare it to? So, you know, I think candidly that was the issue at hand. And Peter, correct me if I'm wrong.
That was probably the main concern as to, I mean, John kind of got something together fairly quick for us to review because of the importance of it. And again, after hearing what his vendor recommended, and then talking with the local vendors who were in that panel every day, you know, LaFleur Electric and Harbor Controls, and talking to them about what we're looking to do and hearing different ways to do it, that's when we kind of, you know, just altered course a little bit and talked to John. And unfortunately, because when we first started this, we were thinking that we could hire John and John could hire his vendor and we could just move forward without going to bid. And unfortunately, I don't believe that that's possible at this time. I've talked to the town administrator, and no matter what, it needs to go out to bid. Not Veolia's component of it, because that can be done, but the other vendor who's going to come in and perform the work, I don't think we can do a project of this scope and size without putting that up to bid.
So Peter, my thought on this one with John, okay, I know there's some trepidations here from both parties. But the bottom line is, I think Viola should oversee this, okay? And that we should move forward with it as soon as possible. We've already had one downtime that was major. We've had a second downtime. We've had a secondary VFD failure. And we're going to run to a situation where we're running out of time. And it's, in my mind, almost emergent. Okay, so let's, get Viola on top of it. And then, John, you get your people on top of it. And you run the subsystem, okay, of things with Peter on who's going to be subcontracting. But there's got to be somebody master coordinating this who really understands this. And I think harbors should be totally involved, because the bottom line is they're the only ones who really understand what the system really is with Vinny. And so without those two components, I think the town is in a very dire situation. And I think there's laws that cover that allow us to move forward with Viola. That's my bottom line, Peter. Thanks.
And again, I think from my perspective, I think John and I are on the same page. We're trying to move forward. And like I said before, Veolia is not getting sidestepped here at all. They're still involved, still handling the communication with Harbor Controls and LaFleur. And I understand, I feel it's very emergent as well. And it's frustrating that it can't get put together sooner, than 3 or 4 weeks in between meetings. And it's hard to, again, kind of keep things moving forward when things take this long to take place, unfortunately. And it's kind of frustrating from my seat as well, Phil. But we are trying to kind of coordinate everything and keep everyone kind of on task as far as like Harbor Controls and LaFleur go, to make sure we can get the information from them that we need.
Peter, tell me if I'm wrong. We have a contract with Viola. We can pay them for sub items off the list, okay, as they come forward. And therefore we can pay them for their engineering and oversight, okay, which includes LaFleur and Harborside and the rest of it. And let them be the lead on this, because they do have the expertise and the engineering behind it that none of us do in the town. You have great understanding of it, but the bottom line is they have the expertise behind it. And I think we need to pay Viola, but they need to manage the upgrade.
And they are. Veolia is the one who's been calling Harbor Controls and LaFleur, not me. Veolia is the one who's been meeting with them and showing them the facility, not me. Correct. So they are the ones that are doing this. And I think my biggest concern of why, personally, I asked John, or when you're working with John and Vinny, to kind of step back a little bit, was I don't want to rush into a $200,000 upgrade, try and get everything we think we need to get done completed. And then a year and a half from now, all of a sudden there's 6 other components that didn't get done. And we're coming back to you for more funding to finish something that we might have been able to include as part of this. So it's granted that the timing is not the best time to be trying to come up with a completely comprehensive plan, because of the seriousness of what might happen if those PLCs go down again. But I'm trying to balance that with what happens if we do a $200,000 upgrade and we could have done a couple of other things at the same time that we didn't. And all of a sudden we're asking for another $75,000 or $100,000 in 18 months.
I'd rather ask for the $75,000 or $100,000 in another 18 months. Replace the PLCs, bring them up to scope as much as we can with some of the upgrades we've talked about. And I thought, a month ago, yeah, great idea. After we saw what happened with the influx coming in of 3 million gallons, And after what we saw with the FNS side going down, I'd rather leave it to people who have the engineering capacity and the understanding. And this is really where Vinny comes in. Vinny understands the plant, okay? And while they're under contract, let's get this done. That's my point. And I'm not going to say anything more on it. Did you get that, Peter?
Yeah. So Phil, do you want to make a motion that directs Veolia to get done what you want to get done, so it'll be in the minutes and we can reference that and make sure that it's taking place?
Well, is that possible under the current circumstances, that it's not on the venue?
The SCADA upgrade is on our agenda under scheduled appointments, so it can be discussed and voted on.
So I make an amendment that Veolia is the oversight and the body that will oversee the SCADA upgrade, and that they have full opportunity and capacity to work with all sub-vendors and to hire all sub-vendors, with the recommendation that Harborside?
Harbor Controls.
Harbor Controls.
Harbor Controls and LaFleur Electric be involved in the situation.
I guess I'm confused. Isn't that kind of what's going on already?
It is kind of what's going on, Dave, but the problem is we're talking about putting it off, which might take 3 or 4 months, because we're looking at doing subcontractors, okay, on both LaFleur and Harborside, with Veolia maybe or maybe not being the oversight, okay, with Peter maybe being the oversight. And then we don't have the ability to have John, if he needs to cost a little bit more, because that's what he's doing for the engineering, okay, to oversight this. The bottom line is Veolia had some concerns whether they wanted to be involved in this or not. But the bottom line is Vinny knows the system, John knows the system, okay? They've done the same upgrade in Rhode Island, okay? Let's let them do it. They know what they're doing, okay? And let's let them see everything. And let's let them have the free license to spend the money. And if we need to go back for more, we'll go back for more. We don't need a system where it dumps into Katy Brook, okay? And floods the situation out, and then we get fined by the state at who knows how much per day.
John, can I ask you, am I wrong by thinking that this is kind of already going on without it being formalized?
Well, I think where we stopped was, yeah, Veolia, our construction group, put together a proposal with a price to submit to do the work under a certain approach. And it didn't include Harbor Controls or LaFleur, because that's not who our construction group works with typically. So the request was then, well, let's engage the people that know it best and see if they have an approach that might be better, might be allow additional work or other things to roll into it.
All right, so let me ask you. So you just did a project like this in Rhode Island?
Yes.
The same thing.
Yeah.
And Veolia was in charge of it, of the whole project, like Phil's making a motion tonight?
Yeah, we've done at least 4 of them in the last several years. And again, that's sort of why we use the same vendor, because it's a very, unique sort of activity.
So what's the extra cost what's the extra cost?
It isn't an extra cost. It's just you don't know what Harbor Controls and LaFleur would recommend doing and at what price. You don't have anything to compare our proposal to, basically.
So what did the Rhode Island one cost?
Oh, gosh, it's about the same amount. I'll get, I don't have it handy.
So it's about the same amount of the quote that we already got?
Well, really what happened was you had a budget and we worked to that budget. Basically, you had a budget of roughly $200,000, knowing that, and as a not to exceed price, we backed into all the scope we could put into that. Obviously making sure that the necessities are met, the PLCs and the communications and the Windows upgrades and all that.
So if we wait 30 days, will we have all the answers? We'll have the answers to all these questions?
What we're waiting for is Harbor Controls and LaFleur to give us their roadmap, their approach. And we were supposed to have it by tonight. Unfortunately, they didn't get it to us, but I'll commit to get it before this week ends. And then I can certainly meet with Peter and we can compare the two approaches. What you won't have is a price, because the intent was to put it out to bid. And having a defined scope, this is what we want you to do, then people could bid on it to give you a price to do that.
So I guess, Mr. Campbell, one of the main reasons for maybe veering off track from where John's initial quote came from is we were able to get done what we needed to get done with his proposal. We were able to replace the two PLCs in that cabinet, rewire some stuff, move some high voltage, and that was going to be it. Again, as we move forward with this process, Harbor Controls was in here as well, because they were doing a blower upgrade. LaFleur has been in and out of the building doing different repairs as well, such as the relay for the EQ pump. And while they're there, Vinny would start talking to them about what's taking place. And it seemed like we could use their expertise to do things differently. Because the original proposal is to shut the plant down, to shut all flow, or to shut one of the MCC cabinets down, which will shut all flow for a night, and go ahead and make the repairs in that MCC cabinet. And the approach from Harbor Controls and LaFleur is that LaFleur's electrician is comfortable doing it without shutting the plant down. So strategically, it's a different process to do it. And because of that, we may be able to get more done. Now, if the impetus is just to fix what the problem is and get that done as soon as possible, we can continue to move forward with that. And the scope of work is written. John can show, here we need to replace these two PLCs. We need to rewire some of this cabinet, and we can go out and get a request for proposal. Now, if you want to maximize what we have for funding with that $200,000 and try and get the biggest bang for the buck, we can step back and ask Harbor Controls and LaFleur to provide a scope of work that is different than what was already proposed, try and get more out of it, and see where that goes. And not just replace those two PLCs, but other PLCs in the building that aren't Windows 10 compatible, and try and get a full upgrade done so that we truly upgrade our SCADA system. Because the other PLCs out in the building are only Windows 7. So we'll have some that are Windows 7 compatible, some that are Windows 10 compatible. Some are still 10 or 12 years old. We'll replace the 20-plus-year-old PLCs. But my thought was, again, if we can do more with that $200,000, replace more of these PLCs, then let's step back and see if we can get that done instead of rushing to just fix what the immediate problem is. Now, if the board doesn't want to go that direction, that's fine. We can move forward, replace what's in dire need of replacement, and get that done as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think, Peter, I think you're accurate in your statement that it's really in the approach of working inside the panel with either it alive or turned off. Our integrator is not comfortable being in that panel with high voltage still online. So that would require, the approach we took was to shut the plant down during the off hours when the flows are low to be able to do that work. Harbor Controls and LaFleur seem to think that they're comfortable doing it in a live panel. And, that's just what they said their approach would be. Again,
John, let me
who's
ask-
right, who's wrong, I'm not sure. I can just tell you that, our integrator was not comfortable being inside that panel with the high voltage live.
John, let me ask you a question. If we got LaFleur to move that high voltage out of the cabinets, now we're in a situation where we ask you to come in and go from there. What's the comfort level that you have to think about? And I don't expect an answer tonight.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, no matter which way we go, I think it's important to separate the high and the low voltage, even for the future, because any additional work that ever may have to happen, you won't have this problem. Veolia's approach was to solve that problem once and for all.
All right, so why don't we have LaFleur come in and separate the high voltage, and then have you guys come in and do your thing?
Because the project is so large, it's tied to the same project. We still have to put that out to bid.
So do we have to put the LaFleur side of it out for bid?
Because it's tied to the larger scale project and not just like a routine maintenance item, yes, I believe we are kind of walking a thin line there if we don't package it together. And one of the other differences is the initial proposal was to set up a whole new cabinet for the high voltage, a whole nother electrical cabinet.
Correct. But
LaFleur is saying that he can partition off one of the existing cabinets and put the high voltage in that, and also clean up some of the components that are in one of the old cabinets that are 25 years old and not even functional anymore, and really give us a good update, so that a lot of equipment that might be sitting in there that's just blank and doesn't go to anywhere, and maybe you're talking probably 100 to 200 wires that are just kind of in that cabinet for no reason, because there's an old sand filter relay in there, and the sand filter's been gone for over 10 years. So again, the project kind of evolved from just fixing a couple of PLCs that need to be repaired into something much bigger. And also, like John said, it's the process to get those done. What's the best way?
well, I think that, given the situation of the fact that we've already gone down once, that we are in a situation where we need to move faster than we thought. And the fact that we had that PLC not connecting with the Ethernet, okay, tells me one more thing. These components are failing, and they're failing fast. So, John, let me ask you something. If LaFleur was, say, able to move that stuff out of the cabinet, is that something your company is willing to take on after that, as Dave mentioned?
Yeah, and I wouldn't, yes. I mean, the short answer is yes, but I also wouldn't necessarily say that we can't try to, once I get how Harbor Controls would want to work, we may want to, just utilize them instead of the vendor we're currently, been working with. I think within the next couple of days, I should know precisely what Harbor Controls and LaFleur would recommend. And at that point, I think this, we can get resolutions to this discussion.
We'll be able to make a much more educated decision than what we're making right now.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Dave. Okay. Yeah. But I just am.
Yeah, I know we're in a tough spot, Phil, but it is what it is. I mean, I hate making an uneducated decision.
Me too. So the bottom line is that we need to get LaFleur and Harborside come up with their plans and in short time. And if they can't, then we need to just go bypass them. Okay.
Then we take the next step. I think we got to give. We got a good team here with Pete and with Veolia. Let them do their thing over the next week or so and see where we come out. I think that's our best choice.
100%, Dave. Okay, Peter has been on top of this all the way, but I had a change of decision after I looked at the meetings minutes and saw, that we lost, a PLC connection and, some of the other issues. And I'm going like, okay, this is why we originally pushed through the request for the $200,000. Maybe it should have gone 270, because I think that's going to be the cost of this thing.
Yeah, and it might be. And again, I guess maybe we'll know that in a week and a half.
John, do you have an estimate that the board could approve for maybe Harbor Controls and LaFleur that you'd feel comfortable asking them to approve. That way they could pre-approve it now and you get their proposal from them and we can just move forward.
Unfortunately, I don't, Peter. I wish I could say I did. I mean, part of the issue is, we're going to have to make sure that, they're bonded and, that, you know what I mean? They're,
Yep.
So I the short answer is no, not at this point, but I will get you something shortly. I'll instruct Vinny to reach out to them tomorrow, first thing.
Peter, what
see
we
what
can always do on short notice is just have another meeting if we want to.
Okay.
I mean, you get all the information together and then we can say, hey, we have all the information together. We don't want to wait until the beginning of the month. And let's have a meeting 3 days from now, post it and have the meeting.
Perfect.
So,
Russ, Dave, great idea. And John, thank you so much because you're under the pressure. And Peter, thank you so much because there's a lot of pressure here on this situation. But I think, unfortunately, it's turned out to be a sooner than later proposition.
No problem. No thanks necessary. It's important to us as well. I mean, we're certainly the ones that are going to be there at night when it does go. So, we appreciate the support.
Yeah,
And we'll get it done. We'll get it done.
I personally would like to go back to the original motion, which is to allow you to, oversee Harbor Controls and also LaFleur, okay, just to see what comes out of that. But I don't think that's going to go with the board, unfortunately.
Phil, that's kind of how it is going, but
Yeah, that's what's going on, right, Pete?
yes.
Yeah. That's what's already going on, Phil.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand what's going on, but I think that, my own side was that Pete's doing a great job, but I think we have an outside engineering company with Vinny on top of it and Peter in conjunction. And it would have been good just to give them the ability to say, hey, we're sub-hiring you.
we'd all like to just give them the golden one and have them move ahead, Phil. But like Peter got into, just we can't because of procurement issues and things like that, and also transparency. And I think we're going about this the right way, and we just have to give it a little more time, and hopefully we can get this speeded up on the back burner and get some answers here in the next week or two. So that's what we're charging John with, and hopefully that we're successful in that before there is any other failures. So if you'd like, Phil, you could put forth a motion. I'm again, I wouldn't want to change the path of anything that's going on myself personally, but feel free if you'd like to make a motion at this time.
At this point, because I trust Peter in absolutely 100%, and I think John is doing a great job, but has some trepidations on this. I think that the coordination going forward is good, but it has to happen quicker than it was happening before, based on what we've heard tonight on part of the SCADA unit communication going down. We've already had the system go down once, and we cannot have, as a town, it go down again, because then we're going to have a mess.
Yep.
And it's only a matter of time.
All right. Well, I think, John, you know what we've charged you with this evening, and you can carry on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Peter.
Can we circle back to the zinc pilot upgrade? I attached in your letter. Do
you need a motion to send that letter?
Yeah, I'd like to get your input on it, and definitely just, if you're okay with it, requesting that we increase the monthly aluminum average up to 400 micrograms per liter.
Absolutely. Based off our discussion this evening, I would be in full favor of that. And I think that's pretty much what we discussed. So if someone would like to make a motion to send that letter.
Second the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to verify with John that he's okay staying with the aluminum pack and not switching back to ferric at this time, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think as, you know, as long as we go on record with the request, we're at least acknowledging that, you know, we know we have an issue and we're looking for some, you know, some guidance from EPA on it, so.
And again, I don't want to take credit for this letter. This letter was prepared by John, so it's just his information that he put forward for you to consider.
Okay, some minor changes, which is that, okay, it says exceed daily limit by zinc of 142 UG/L by a very small amount. Let's give them the amounts that we went by, because it was only 147 instead of saying small amount. And then we can basically then say that, you know, the zinc project underneath, we respectfully request a consideration increase monthly aluminum average discharge of 400 UG/L, which will allow us to meet our zinc daily limits, is what I would add to that letter.
So under the amended motion, would you like to second that as well, Dave?
Yeah. Second.
Very good. Okay. Amended motion and the second. Any further discussion on that? Peter, does that suffice?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's good. That way there, again, I just want the board to be comfortable with what I'm sending out on your behalf.
Yep. Okay. So we'll need a roll call vote on that.
Mr. Ridlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Aye.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Aye.
Mr. Jennings.
Aye. All right, very good. So we will wait to hear back from John and move forward from there.
Thank you, John.
No
Yes.
problem. Appreciate
Thank you,
the-
John. Thank
the
you, Vinny.
support.
John, thank you so much for your insights, time, and your great company. Okay,
No.
I just can't imagine how we would do it in the town without you.
Yeah, I look forward to when we can just discuss the weather, right?
Yeah, we-
Complicated things.
Maybe next year at this time.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll certainly be back in touch shortly.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. And now getting to our 7 o'clock. Sorry for the wait. We have Treehouse.
Yes, actually, Garrett O'Malley sent me a text. He had to leave at 7:40, so he's no longer on the meeting.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I don't have any information from him to share. He said he was going to send me his minutes, but I haven't gotten them yet. So
All right. So we can visit that at a later date and time.
yes, I think that'd be smart.
Very good. All right.
So
Next, Peter, we have our budget.
yes, new business. That time of the year, we're going to start planning for the annual town meeting in May. Our budgets are due to the finance director for her review. I've attached them for your review and discussion. Again, preliminary budget, there's still time to change or make changes or edits, but it's here. There is minimal changes that have been made from the previous year. So as you look through the spreadsheet, you'll see what was on the left, you'll see what was approved the last 2 fiscal years, and you'll see what we're reflecting for this year. Again, the FY 2022 budget will cover the time frame from July 1st to 2021 to June 30th, 2022. So the budgets, again, they're attached. If you want me to probably wait and just go through any specific questions, I guess.
When is this sent? When is this sent to the finance director, Peter?
It was
When is
already.
she looking at this?
She's the one who put this together.
This is the preliminary budget for
This
us.
is a preliminary budget for you. Yes, she put this together based on what we did last year, and I don't believe you can look and see. I don't believe there's many changes per se.
Yep.
So as far, I mean, we start with the water budget, kind of look at it.
When does it have to be finalized?
It won't be finalized till the night of town meeting. You could make changes right up to town meeting.
Okay,
So there's really no rush. It just kind of comes down to,
sure.
again, try hopefully get ahead of it. Like I said, there's not a lot of changes. So if there's any major concerns that jump out to you now, let me know and we can address them sooner than later. I believe I scheduled the budget to be in front of the finance committee in March.
Okay.
So I guess the biggest thing is, one, to look at the budget amounts, and two is to look at our revenue, which is on the page following. So for our operating budget for water, we're going to use $33,000 from retained earnings. We're going to use $17,000 from the water true up from Southbridge that we get annually. I believe that amount is low. I believe we actually get more than that per year, but it's a conservative number. And we're going to use $50,000 from the water stabilization fund to cover the capital improvement line item. So our water budget is pretty straightforward. We do carry some. There'll be the only salaries coming out of the water budget will be for the commissioners. Neither Sue or my salary will come out of there. There is an OPEB contribution, other post-employment benefits that's carried. That's done by an actuary study that the finance director does with the accountant, and that's a number that's fixed. And when we come down to our kind of our operating budget, the stuff that we have control over, the maintenance and expenses at $10,000, our engineering expenses at $10,000, legal expenses at $15,000. These are all amounts that we very rarely delve into. So these amounts pretty much get turned in at the end of every year because we haven't had to use them. The only reason to keep legal expenses as high as they are is in case we need the attorney to maybe negotiate a consecutive water agreement or anything like that. So again, just because the funds are here does not mean that they get spent by any means. General insurance will get spent. The indirect costs get spent. Again, the indirect costs are a direct equation based on our operating budget with respect to the town budget. That equation is also attached to the budget. So I know that's a quick rundown, but again, hopefully it's consistent with what we did last year. You can see what was approved on the left-hand column before the description of the line item and then what we're asking for this year. Are there any questions at this time on the water budget?
No, I think we can take some time with this, and if any other questions come up or people would like to make suggestions, we can do so.
Yeah,
in the
so
next
I'll carry this
meeting or
over to our next meeting or two, definitely,
Yep.
so we can just keep on kind of looking at it and taking second looks at it. Moving on to the sewer budget,
Question, Peter.
you have half of the commissioner's salaries on there as well. My salary and Sue's salary. And then you have the payroll related expenses that go along with that. And then when you get down to, again, I'll call this our true operating budget, what we have true control over that can change. Our maintenance equipment line item is the same, pretty much the same with what was approved last year. Sewer plant operations, which is Veolia, I increased by, I think, maybe 5%. And part of the reason for doing that is we're going out to bid next year for a new contract, so we know, that price might come up, and also just to give us a little bit of room. Again, it's out of a $500,000 line item, it went up $12,000, so that's less than 3% of an increase. Engineering consultant, we're carrying $10,000 a year again, which is consistent with last year, and again, we haven't really touched any of that so far this year. Legal expenses is $10,000. Training's $1,000. Loan administration fees are out of our control. The general insurance is out of our control. Indirect expenses, again, out of our control. Annual I&I at $44,000. We've historically used half of that over the last 3 years, but it's been set at $44,000 for the last 3 years or so. Meter purchase is 10,000, and that money, we collect revenue for every meter that goes out. So that's not really a cost. It's just an allowance up front for us to purchase them so we can sell them to customers. The debt service is fixed. Capital outlay, that's our capital line item at $100,000. So the sewer budget's a little more confusing because it carries debt. But our true operating cost before debt is the $100,000 capital outlay and the total service supplies of $957,000. So our total operating budget that we have control over is that we have to create revenue to cover is say $1,057,700, and all the remainder of our budget is to cover debt. Now, if you look at our revenue, our usage charges, we create enough revenue to cover our operating without having to go into our retained earnings or into our stabilization account.
What's
So-
the figure on that, Peter? Do you have an idea? Approximately?
It's showing 1.372 for total revenues.
And what's our cost? If you look at the total, could we add, if necessary, some of these SCADA things to it?
No. So what happened with the SCADA thing is the SCADA approval. If you look on that capital outlay where it shows $100,000,
Yep.
we use that line item for, usually we use it for repairs or larger scale equipment that's not an annual maintenance item. So some of the larger pumps that we have to buy, they're $5,000 or $6,000. We take it out of that capital replacement equipment line. Because we got that $200,000 approved at the special town meeting to come out of stabilization, they put that $200,000 into our capital outlay line in our FY21 budget. So when you look at our current budget right now, that capital outlay balance is like $270,000, Sue, in the ballpark.
So
Yes.
could we
So-
use that to use Lafleur and Harborside to do their side of the upgrade and then go to the aspect of going back to Viola for their upgrade?
The money is there for us to have them, I think, perform the paper study part of it to get us to the RFQ process. It's not there for them to perform any hard work on the actual upgrade,
Why would that be?
because it's part of the actual upgrade that gets you into the larger cost of the project. So if you have a $200,000 project and you say, well, I'm going to hire 20 vendors at $10,000 a piece so I don't have to go out to bid, they still put all that together as one project, and they don't let you circumvent the procurement law by doing that. And they're very aware of that.
Even though
they have a term for it. So they may look at this as saying, because yes, you hired Harbor Controls and they do a lot of work for you, and LaFleur Electric does routine work for you as well. But if they start doing work that's tied to this larger upgrade, they may see that. And I'm just very, maybe I'm being overcautious, but I don't want to be, I don't know if it's the Inspector General or the Attorney General. I don't want to be talking to them about procurement.
Well, I just
No, I don't think you're being overcautious, Peter, because that's the way you just have to do it. You can't segment the project in a fashion that you would get under the spending threshold, and then people would just do that constantly, and then nothing would ever go out to bid. And that's why they designed the standard that way. But it is a project. Anything associated with the project and that spending has to be classified under that.
But if Harbor Controls and LaFleur tell John tomorrow that they're going to be $4,000 for them to do their work and get the paper study done to give John the information to create the RFQ, that I believe we can fund without having any problems.
Oh, I think
Correct.
that's
But from
positive.
there you can't.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, but that's positive. It still puts money back in the main project.
And then again, so just to kind of go one step forward with the appropriation that we have for the $200,000, even though it's attached to our FY21 budget, once we get a proposal to perform the work, if it's not done by June 30th, 2021, the end of FY 2021, we can encumber the funds to carry it forward to the next year to continue to pay for that project. So they won't go away.
Yep.
So again, the nice thing about the sewer budget, it is self-balanced. So we are bringing in enough, we are anticipating bringing in enough revenue to cover our annual operating expenses and not have to dive into retained earnings or stabilization to balance the budget. So
Very good.
I
And
think
again,
that-
anyone with input or questions on this in the next couple meetings, we can go over that as well.
Looks good to me.
all
Right, moving ahead, Peter, on the tank.
Yeah, so the Route 20 water tank, even though it's not being used, I went up there and I know the DEP still does it. I think it's every 5 years they come out and do site inspections on our whole system. But that's mostly done with Whitewater because they operate the system. So while they're doing the Southbridge system, they come out with Whitewater and look at what a portion of our water distribution system that Whitewater operates. And they mentioned that again, the scrub brush around the perimeter fence at the water tank is overgrown and starting to kind of, it's not really, luckily it's not taking the fence down yet, but it is overgrown and should be cut back. So I did talk to Advantage Tree. They are able to come out and take care of that for us this week if you could approve it. And again, we have a bid price that the town has gotten from them for a full day of work would be $2,800, much like what they've done maybe 6 weeks ago at the sewer treatment plant when they cleaned up along the fence there.
So you need a motion to approve the 2,800 for clearing around the fence at the water tank
Please.
by Advantage.
Yep.
Would someone like to make that motion?
Motion to accept as written.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Mr. Cantwell, second. Any other questions, concerns? Hearing none, a roll call vote.
Mr. Idlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Abstain.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Aye.
and Mr. Jennings.
Aye.
All right.
All right. The next one, I just say we just veto this, and Peter, you can't spend any time away, obviously.
I was hoping to wear you guys down before we got here.
You need a motion for this, Peter, or you're just letting us? You don't need a motion, do you?
Nah. No.
All right.
Okay.
If you need a motion to take time off, then it's time to call it a day.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
make a motion to give Peter time off. Have a nice couple of days off, Peter.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Very good. Thank you for letting us know. And now we've come to the privilege fee, transfer of the privilege fee. You want to run this down for us, Peter?
I'm going to do my best. So in
Thank you.
2016, the commission assessed a large sewer privilege fee of $131,200 for the development of 16 duplex buildings on City Depot Road to Rockaway Realty Trust. The site plan that was approved was part of a larger parcel, so it's probably I'm going to say a 38-acre parcel, and he was using a smaller portion of that as part of this development. So the privilege fee was assessed to that large parcel. We'll call that the mother lot. After that privilege fee was assessed, the owner subdivided the property and has since sold the new parcel that contains the duplex development to a new owner, to a buyer. So there's a new owner there. Unfortunately, the privilege fee stayed with the mother lot and did not get transferred to the new parcel, as I guess the owner and the attorneys would just expect happen on its own. So in working with the assessors over the last, it's probably been 4 months now, 5 months now, trying to find the correct process. In order for the assessors to transfer the privilege fee to the new parcel, they're asking that you, the Water Sewer Commission, approve the process, the transfer to take place.
So this is a housekeeping issue.
Yeah, so the
clarify
privilege fee,
that.
the privilege fee is not going to go away. It's going to get
Yep.
transferred from one map block and lot to the newly created map block and lot that houses the subdivision that needs the actual allotment that the privilege fee is paying for.
Question, Peter, what's the old privilege fee versus the new privilege fee?
I don't follow.
It stays the same, Phil.
It stays the same. So there's no change in what the privilege fee.
There's only the change in the physical address of the property or the tax ID number. Correct?
Yeah,
Peter?
there are certain parts of town though where there was an old privilege fee that was less than the current.
No, this got assessed at the phase 2 fee of $8,200 per EDU.
Okay, so it's the same as the old one. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
So
All right,
again,
so
just to keep
we need a
things
motion.
clean-
Motion to
We need a
accept.
motion.
Motion to accept
Oh.
as written.
Second, do we have a second? Jack, Paul, do we
I'll
have a
second
second? Very good. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote.
Mr. Ridlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Aye.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Abstain.
and Mr. Jennings.
Aye. Very good.
Sorry, what did you say, Dave?
I abstain.
I still
Abstain.
didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Abstain.
All right, thank you. Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, next is old business. What do you have, Peter?
Just the waterline construction update. There hasn't been much work over the last few weeks because of the holidays. The Bay Path pump station is still not connected yet. The service connections for the school loop, there's still minimal work being done, but depending on the weather and what happens, they're probably going to try and start doing more service connections as we move forward. There's an update meeting tomorrow, so I'll know more after that. And as far as the school loop itself goes, the water line has not yet been activated.
Very
That's
good.
all I have for that.
All right, so barring getting back the information that we have requested from John in a more timely fashion, then for next month's meeting, potentially we would have a meeting in between to address the subject matter. With that being said, we'll still carry on forward with our next scheduled meeting as February 1. Correct?
Yes. Hopefully we'll have that information back from John and also be able to get Treehouse on board before the February 1st meeting so we can get that done.
Okay. All right. That sounds like a reasonable plan. Everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Reasonable. I'm just sorry we missed Treehouse tonight.
Well,
Hey, Peter,
the other
I have a question, Peter. I'm just thinking here. The day that we had that 1.3 million gallons or whatever at the plant, that was the day it rained out. I saw a tremendous amount of water coming off of the hill where Nichols is clearing, and it flooded out the whole bottom of like Route 169 on the grass part on the other side of the street. That leads right up to Katy Brook. Would that have anything to do with that issue?
Only if we have some manhole covers there that aren't completely watertight. But this time of year, like anything, when the ground's partially frozen and there's some snow coverage or not, and the ground gets saturated, when we get that type of rain that quickly, the water flows and the flows just come in. It's hard to know to pinpoint exactly where it's coming from.
Okay.
it's impossible. It's impossible to have all the manhole covers airtight, and that's a large portion of where all the I&I on a storm like that is going to come in from, and it's just going to happen. There's no avoidance.
Okay.
Didn't you do a prior study on 169 and Carpenter Hill before? I think, if I remember.
We've done I&I work, yes, on not 169, but on Carpenter Hill Road. We did that last year.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I remember that it showed that there wasn't really a huge influx.
So again, part of the problem is we can check the pipes out, we can check the condition of those, but it's hard. We can do smoke tests to kind of check for downspouts from gutters that are connected and stuff like that. But you know, people with sump pumps and stuff like that, it's very hard to find that. So you know, we can set up the meters and identify the areas of town where the higher flow is coming, but without going, you know, house to house, basement to basement, it's going to be tough to really tell. Above and beyond, you know, typical groundwater and stuff like that. We're doing what we can annually to try and take small steps and identify or find some bigger issues. And we'll see.
There's this one of those issues where we should look at it, putting on the agenda saying, hey, listen, you know, here's the current fine for having a sump pump that dumps into our system, and we increase the fine, and we let all the residents know. I mean, that's one of the other subtopics that I've always thought about. I mean, do we send out a letter to everybody in the town and say, hey, listen, if you got a sump pump, this is a new fine, and it's not going to be pretty if you get caught.
Right. Again, I think
it's a thought.
No, it's
for future use.
Yeah.
All right, so the only thing left is the motion to adjourn.
Real quick under other business.
Yep. Oh,
we were
sorry.
able
Go
to.
ahead, Peter.
That's all right. We're able to read meters today, so that got done for the last quarter. And Wednesday night, we are back in front of the planning board for the continuation of our site plan hearing for Buffalo. Beta was able to get all of the revisions to Graves and to the planning board that were requested, and hopefully things will go well Wednesday night.
Peter, thank you. I was just about ready to ask you about that under the old business.
Yep. So that's all
Very
I have,
good.
Mr. Chair.
Excellent.
So,
All right.
Making a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
A roll call vote.
Mr. Ridlack,
Aye.
Mr. Gagner,
Aye.
Mr. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Cantwell,
Aye.
and Mr. Jennings.
Aye.
All right.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Peter.
Bye, guys.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Have a nice night.